The world watched in astonishment. Donald Trump, President of the United States, and Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, were to meet. Saudi Arabia, a surprising choice, was announced as the host. What could this unexpected meeting mean? Whispers of political maneuvering filled the airwaves. Analysts scrambled to decipher the motives behind this bold move. The meeting, steeped in intrigue, promised to reshape the global landscape. What would unfold in the Saudi Arabian desert? The world held its breath. The stakes were high. This meeting, shrouded in secrecy, had the potential to alter the course of history. The world watched with bated breath. The United States and Russia, two superpowers, have a long and complicated history. From Cold War tensions to moments of tentative cooperation, their relationship has shaped the world. Now, they were meeting once more. The weight of history hung heavy in the air. Past grievances and triumphs cast long shadows. The meeting, a culmination of decades of interactions, had the potential to either heal old wounds or exacerbate existing tensions. The world watched with bated breath, hoping for a positive outcome. The meeting, a pivotal moment in international relations, had the potential to usher in a new era of cooperation or deepen existing divisions. The stage was set for a momentous encounter. The meeting, a test of diplomacy and statecraft, would reveal the intentions of these two powerful nations and their leaders. The future, it seemed, hung in the balance. The echoes of the Cold War reverberated through the decades, a chilling reminder of the stakes involved in US-Russia relations. The world had watched, captivated, as two superpowers engaged in a high-stakes game of chess, their ideologies clashing on the global stage. The specter of nuclear annihilation loomed large, casting a long shadow over international relations. From the ashes of World War II arose a new conflict, one fought not with conventional weapons but with propaganda, espionage, and the constant threat of mutually assured destruction. The United States, champion of democracy and capitalism, faced off against the Soviet Union, a communist behemoth seeking to spread its influence across the globe. The world became a battleground for their ideological struggle, dividing nations and shaping destinies. The Berlin Wall, a stark symbol of division, stood as a physical manifestation of the ideological chasm that separated East and West. The Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. Proxy wars raged in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, fueled by the superpowers' relentless pursuit of dominance. The Cold War, a period of intense rivalry and mistrust, left an indelible mark on the global psyche. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought an end to the Cold War, but it did not erase the complex history shared by the United States and Russia. The legacy of suspicion and mistrust lingered, casting a shadow over their future interactions. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the question remained: could these former adversaries forge a new path, one based on cooperation and mutual respect? The fall of the Berlin Wall ushered in a brief period of optimism, a thaw in the icy relations between the US and Russia. Presidents Yeltsin and Clinton met, seeking common ground. However, NATO's eastward expansion created friction. Russia viewed it as a betrayal of trust. The thaw in US-Russia relations had come to an end, paving the way for a new era of geopolitical frost. The turn of the millennium brought with it a new set of challenges and a palpable chill in US-Russia relations. Vladimir Putin's ascension to the Russian presidency marked a turning point, his assertive foreign policy a stark contrast to the more conciliatory approach of his predecessor. The world watched, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, as Putin reasserted Russia's position on the global stage, challenging the perceived dominance of the West. The US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, undertaken without UN Security Council authorization, deepened the divide between the two nations. Russia, a staunch opponent of the war, viewed it as a blatant violation of international law and a destabilizing force in the Middle East. The war in Iraq, a defining moment in the early 21st century, exacerbated existing tensions and cast a long shadow over US-Russia relations. The Rose Revolution in Georgia in 2003 and the Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2004, both seen as Western-backed uprisings, further fueled Russia's suspicions of Western intentions. Russia viewed these events as attempts to undermine its influence in its own backyard, fueling a sense of encirclement and resentment. The color revolutions, as they became known, marked a turning point, signaling the re-emergence of geopolitical competition in Eastern Europe. In the days leading up to the summit, the Kremlin maintained a calculated silence, their public statements a masterpiece of diplomatic ambiguity. While the world speculated on their motives, Moscow offered little insight into their objectives for the meeting. The carefully crafted silence fueled the intrigue, leaving analysts to decipher the cryptic pronouncements of Kremlin spokespeople. Some interpreted the silence as a sign of strength, a poker face concealing a strong hand. Others saw it as a tactical maneuver, a way to keep the West guessing and maintain the element of surprise. The Kremlin, masters of information control, understood the power of silence in a world saturated with noise. Publicly, the Kremlin emphasized the importance of dialogue and cooperation, stressing the need to find common ground on issues of mutual interest. They highlighted the shared challenges facing both nations, from terrorism to climate change, emphasizing the need for a constructive and pragmatic relationship. Their words, however, were carefully chosen, leaving ample room for interpretation. Behind the carefully constructed facade of diplomacy, a sense of purpose permeated the Kremlin's actions. The decision to meet with President Trump in Saudi Arabia was not taken lightly. It signaled a clear intention to engage with the United States on their own terms, to shape the narrative and advance their interests on the global stage. The world watched, captivated by the unfolding drama, eager to decipher the true motives behind the Kremlin's calculated silence. While the Kremlin maintained its public silence, rumors and speculations swirled through the corridors of power. Intelligence agencies worked feverishly to intercept communications, hoping to glean insights into the Kremlin's true objectives. Journalists, hungry for a scoop, chased down leads and cultivated sources, eager to be the first to break the story. Whispers of backroom deals and secret agreements filled the air, fueling a sense of intrigue and paranoia. Some sources suggested that the Kremlin was seeking relief from Western sanctions, imposed in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine. Others speculated that they were intent on securing concessions in Syria, where Russia had intervened militarily to support the Assad regime. Leaks, intentional or otherwise, added fuel to the fire, providing tantalizing glimpses into the Kremlin's thinking. One report suggested that Russia was seeking to drive a wedge between the United States and its European allies, exploiting existing divisions over trade and defense spending. Another hinted at a grand bargain, a quid pro quo involving cooperation on counter-terrorism in exchange for a blind eye to Russia's activities in its near abroad. The lack of concrete information only served to heighten the sense of anticipation and uncertainty. The world held its breath, waiting for the summit to begin, hoping for clues to unravel the enigma that was the Kremlin's true agenda. The stakes were high, and the outcome uncertain, as the world braced itself for the diplomatic dance that was about to unfold. The ongoing conflict in Syria loomed large, a flashpoint for US-Russia tensions. Russia's intervention in 2015 favored Assad, drawing Western criticism. The US, committed to Assad's removal, found itself sidelined. The Kremlin aimed to solidify its gains and secure US recognition. They sought concessions from Washington to accept Assad's rule. Syria was a key bargaining chip in high-stakes negotiations. Beyond Syria, the Middle East figured prominently in the Kremlin's plans. Russia expanded its influence, forging ties with Iran and Turkey. The Kremlin positioned itself as a reliable partner against American hegemony. Russia's ambitions extended to securing access to oil and gas. They aimed to expand arms sales in the conflict-ridden region. The summit was about Russia's broader ambitions in the Middle East. The choice of Saudi Arabia as the venue for the Trump-Putin summit raised eyebrows across the globe. Why would these two leaders, representing such vastly different ideologies and interests, choose to meet in the heart of the Arabian Peninsula? The answer, it seemed, lay in the complex web of alliances, rivalries, and strategic calculations that defined the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, a close ally of the United States, had been seeking to position itself as a key mediator in regional conflicts. The kingdom, home to Islam's holiest sites, commanded a degree of respect and influence in the Muslim world that Washington could only envy. By hosting the summit, Riyadh hoped to demonstrate its commitment to peace and stability in the region, while also showcasing its own growing diplomatic clout. For the Kremlin, Saudi Arabia offered a unique opportunity to engage with the United States on neutral ground, away from the scrutiny and potential distractions of a meeting in Washington or Moscow. Riyadh's close ties to Washington also meant that the Trump administration would be under considerable pressure to ensure the success of the summit, potentially making them more amenable to Russian demands. The choice of Saudi Arabia as the venue also reflected the shifting sands of global power. The kingdom, once heavily reliant on the United States for its security, had been pursuing a more independent foreign policy, seeking to diversify its alliances and assert its own interests. The summit, it seemed, was as much about Saudi Arabia's own ambitions as it was about the relationship between the United States and Russia. Saudi Arabia, walking a diplomatic tightrope, sought to maintain a delicate balance between its long-standing alliance with the United States and its burgeoning relationship with Russia. The kingdom, acutely aware of the potential pitfalls of alienating either superpower, tread carefully, emphasizing the need for dialogue and cooperation while avoiding any public pronouncements that could be construed as taking sides. The presence of both Trump and Putin on Saudi soil presented Riyadh with both opportunities and risks. On the one hand, the summit offered the kingdom a chance to elevate its international profile and demonstrate its ability to convene world leaders on matters of global importance. A successful summit brokered by Saudi diplomacy could burnish the kingdom's credentials as a regional power broker and a force for stability. On the other hand, the summit carried the risk of backfiring spectacularly, potentially embroiling Saudi Arabia in the complex web of US-Russia tensions and exposing it to accusations of bias from one side or the other. A failure to bridge the divide between Washington and Moscow, or worse, a collapse of the summit amidst acrimony and recriminations, could damage Saudi Arabia's reputation and undermine its efforts to position itself as a neutral mediator. The kingdom, acutely aware of the stakes involved, pulled out all the stops to ensure the summit's success. Lavish receptions, cultural performances and private meetings were meticulously orchestrated to foster a positive atmosphere and encourage dialogue. Behind the scenes, Saudi diplomats worked tirelessly to facilitate communication between the American and Russian delegations, seeking common ground and managing expectations. News of the Trump-Putin meeting reverberated across the globe, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles. World leaders scrambled to assess the implications for their countries and the global balance of power. European allies expressed apprehension and cautious optimism. The American public remained divided, reflecting the polarized political landscape. The meeting underscored the interconnectedness of the modern world. Nations watched, holding their breath as the two leaders met. The Trump-Putin meeting sent tremors through global financial markets, as investors grappled with potential economic fallout. Uncertainty surged, with analysts struggling to predict the summit's impact on oil prices and international trade. The world watched, anxiety etched on faces, as the global economy braced for the aftershocks. Oil prices fluctuated wildly, reflecting geopolitical instability. Russia sought relief from sanctions, hoping for a market shift. Analysts debated the potential easing of sanctions and its impact on oil prices. Deep mistrust suggested sanctions might remain, keeping markets volatile. The summit's shadow loomed over international trade, already strained by disputes. Tariffs and confrontational trade policies left businesses and investors on edge. The meeting could exacerbate tensions, risking a global trade breakdown. The summit highlighted the interconnectedness of the global economy. Businesses, investors, and policymakers awaited the outcome, their fortunes hanging in the balance. Section 3. The New World Disorder Shifting Alliances. The Trump-Putin meeting reshaped global alliances, challenging the post-World War II order and sending shockwaves through NATO. European allies watched with apprehension as the US seemed to cozy up to Russia, potentially emboldening Putin's ambitions. Russia's growing influence in the Middle East complicated American efforts, signaling a new world disorder with shifting alliances. Section 1. The Shifting Sands of Global Power. The Trump-Putin meeting in Saudi Arabia highlighted the shifting sands of global power. The world watched as two leaders met, their every word and gesture scrutinized. The summit underscored the complexities of a world with new power centers. The post-World War II order faced limitations. The geopolitical landscape became more fluid and unpredictable. The US faced challenges from rising nations like China and Russia. Regional actors like Saudi Arabia played crucial roles. These players asserted their own agency and strategic objectives. The Riyadh meeting highlighted Saudi Arabia's growing influence. The Trump-Putin meeting left the world with more questions than answers. The international community grappled with the implications of this encounter. The future remained uncertain as the world navigated the shifting sands of global power. Section 2. A world holding its breath. In the aftermath of the Trump-Putin meeting, the world held its breath, suspended between hope and trepidation. The summit had the potential to either usher in a new era of cooperation or exacerbate existing tensions. The international community now found itself in uncharted territory. The meeting exposed deep divisions within the United States and Europe. Trump's willingness to engage with Putin raised concerns about America's commitment to its traditional partnerships. The summit emboldened authoritarian leaders and adversaries. The meeting injected new uncertainty into an already volatile global landscape. Financial markets reacted nervously to the prospect of a realignment in global power. Businesses, investors, and policymakers adopted a wait-and-see approach. The global economy faced the added burden of geopolitical uncertainty. The world, holding its breath, waited for the other shoe to drop. Would the Trump-Putin meeting prove to be a turning point, or would it mark the beginning of a new era of great power competition? The answer lay shrouded in the mists of the future as the world held its breath. Section 3. The future of the US-Russia relationship. The Trump-Putin meeting in Saudi Arabia left the future of the US-Russia relationship hanging in the balance. Decades of mistrust, from the Cold War to recent tensions over Ukraine and Syria, cast a long shadow. The meeting held the potential to reset relations or further entrench divisions. It exposed fundamental differences in worldview and values. The US emphasizes democracy and human rights, contrasting with Russia's autocratic system. These differences suggest a challenging path forward. Domestic and international factors will shape the relationship. Russian interference in the 2016 election fuels calls for a confrontational approach. Putin's grip on power remains secure. The road to a stable US-Russia relationship will be long and arduous. The Trump-Putin meeting left the future uncertain. The world watched with hope and apprehension. The stakes were high, the outcome uncertain.